Welcome back to In the House with Beth and Ryan. I'm Beth, and this is Ryan.
Today, we are going to talk briefly about the first quarter results in Guelph real estate and probably what it means for the next 3 months in Guelph real estate, and talk to you about how the next 3 months could be impacting you as a seller, as well as how they could be impacting you as a buyer. The first quarter of the year was down double digits in almost every possible metric.
Number of units sold, price.
Yep. Total dollar sales. So if you add up all the units, all the regular measures that we use, they were all down. And it was, to summarize it, it was probably related to a number of things. The overall economy and the U.S. tariff discussions and how that could impact Guelph specifically, which could be significant.
From our own perspective, just with speaking with our clients and people in our day-to-day lives, it sounds like there's still a lot of people who are kind of waiting, especially with our own election about to happen. People are kind of waiting to see how everything's going to shake out. That seems to be a pretty common strategy, wait and see.
That's right. And as a result, even though the tariffs were discussed and not implemented, just the talk of it put people on the sidelines. So
exactly,
it did have some implications. We personally in our business have noticed a rebound in April, but that may not necessarily be just us. It may just be the spring market.
Right. So the next 3 months, April, May, and June. So they represent 25% of the year, but they typically represent about 30% of business. So they tend to be the higher transaction months, May being the busiest month in terms of just the number of transactions that happen. So as we see what happens and what develops in the next few months, it'll be a pretty good indication of, I guess, things to come and just where people are at and what's going to happen with the market.
And as people wait for the snow to melt and the trees to fill in and the green grass to show up.
The snow has melted.
The snow has melted. Well, I hope we don't get any more. As we get into April and May, as Beth mentioned, May is the big month. But as a buyer, you're going to realize the largest inventory. So the numbers that Beth mentioned are total transactions. So you'll notice that there's going to be the most selection available to you in May. You may not, notice it if you're not actively looking, but the most selection and options do arrive in May. But at the same time, for a transaction to complete, you need the buyer side of that transaction too. So it's important that as we get into April, May, and June, that the buyers also show up along with the listings, because both sides together make the transaction, and without one half, there's no transaction to be had. And if the first 3 months of the year are any indication what we're going to find in the next 3 months, it will probably be slower.
Although it does feel like things are picking up, but to Ryan's point, that things typically do pick up at this time of year. So will it be busy as previous years, or even though it's busier than the first 3 months, is it still going to be slow, comparatively speaking?
And we're into April, so we're just about to round out the first of the 3 months, and April is coming in very light. In fact, it is the only year that in the past 10 that has sold less houses in April was April of COVID. And every other April has been higher volume than this April. So overall transactions are down. It just simply means that buyers and sellers are not coming together on deals. They can't seem to make the terms work. Partially because maybe sellers are still asking higher prices than buyers are willing to pay for them.
We have noticed, not to get too into this, but we have noticed there's one segment that is really kind of moving. I know we're not going to get too into it, but just that kind of under $1 million detached house, freehold, that is really moving. There's not a lot of supply, and there seems to be a lot of demand. But otherwise it's pretty slow.
There's not, in that segment, there's just not enough being built. So anybody who wants to move to Guelph into a detached home, you only have limited supply. But just because in the condo and stacked townhouse market, they continue to build it. So there's more options. But there are less options in detached. So if we look into May and June, after we get through our April results, it's probably going to be more of the same. Our guess is that it's going to be a higher inventory, lower sales volume months, because buyers are still a little bit nervous, I think, and still sitting on the sidelines. So just be prepared if you are a seller to have your house maybe sit a little bit longer. It may be a little more negotiation than you like. One of the things that we are seeing more and more of, we have a number of them right now, are transactions that have a sale of property condition.
Yeah, and a sale of property domino effect where there is a few different transactions that have all got the sale of property and they're all kind of waiting for the first domino to fall.
And it needs to be, I mean, it's a really different market than it was 4 years ago. You would be laughed at if you had a sale of property condition 4 years ago, but now it's totally acceptable to have that. And as Beth mentioned, oftentimes I think they call it stacked offers, where they're all reliant on the first person in line to sell their house, and then everybody else along the line can firm up their deal. So it is a very different market for that reason. And
which isn't all bad, because in a way it just makes things, it's a little less aggressive out there.
Right.
So there's a little bit more time to think and a little bit more time to do things in a conservative way.
Right. Yeah. And most of the offers we see do have an escape clause in that sale of property condition, which I'll link in the video notes, because it's a pretty popular and common thing to have now for the benefit of a seller in an offer.
Right.
That's all I have. Is that all you have?
That sounds good.
Okay, so until we see you next time, if you like what you have, do you know that we have 300 subscribers? We have 305 subscribers, and we had 120 something, maybe just about a month ago.
Okay.
So it's pretty impressive. It's because we're doing these more frequently. It's because we have a real estate podcast now that I do that almost has 100 downloads, or maybe 105. But as always, you can find us on our website at bethandryan.ca and reach out if you have questions.